So after discussing this with some people who kind of gave me feedback on it, my last video, I'd like to upload a brief addendum to my thoughts from the last video. I don't think that we should ignore the issue of race, particularly. What I was trying to get across in my last video, and probably not actually getting across, is that I think that the most radical action in this situation is a kind of inaction, wherein, like, if someone has had a harder time of it in life because of their race or sexuality or some such personal trait or whatever, I guess is the word. If someone has had a harder time of it in life because of something like that, I think that human empathy dictates that we give them some slack, make it easier for them to be admitted to colleges, or, like not like. I think that we should give them slack in terms of like college admissions and healthcare and stuff like that. But and yeah, that's affirmative action, but I think one thing that I kind of failed to talk about in the last video, or failed to think of in the last video, is what actually affirmative action is. I think that there are two kinds of affirmative action. There is the Cornell West version of affirmative action, or so I'll call it, wherein we recognize the issue of race and how it is culturally perceived, because it is most definitely an issue in our society, and I don't think that that can be ignored. But we can deal with this issue constructively. We can have conversations about race constructively, and affirmative action is part of that conversation. But I think that the thing that separates the Cornell West version from what I'll call the MSNBC version is that the Cornell West version is a matrix of personality traits, in that it doesn't view people simply as defined by race. It takes into account other factors like poverty, sexuality, religion, gender, all of that stuff. And all of that goes into creating the minorities that we are helping with affirmative action. And it's all a very complex, again, miscegenation of characteristics, and recognizing the flux of the identities of the people that we are helping. I think it's a good way of providing that monetary or societal advantage without trapping them into this identity of being necessarily black or lesbian or Muslim, or etc., etc. But the MSNBC version is the kind of version that I was more or less being knee-jerk reactionary to in the last video. It's this kind of it's this discourse that seems to propose that these people are black and depressed, and I am so guilty as a white privileged male that I feel the need to repeat over and over and over and over and over again how much I want to help these minorities. But I don't really want to do that much work on it, because that would require that I sacrifice my white privilege, so I'm just going to give them, like a $2,000 scholarship for having black skin or something. That's the kind that I was objecting to. And I think that affirmative action started out as a really good idea, and it's kind of been hijacked by people like, Rachel effin Maddow, or people who use it as a way to ameliorate their white guilt. And that's the trouble that any philosophical system works itself into. What's the line between being genuinely empathetic and just pitying others? And I think pity is a really destructive thing, because it's not actually for the sake of the other. It's for the sake of quelling your self-conscious. So yeah, I apologize for anybody who was offended by my last video. I think we should have conversations about race, and I think we should try to deal with it. And ultimately, I think that we could kind of ignore these binaries, these racial binaries of black versus white, etc. But I think before that can happen, we need to have a long and serious talk as a society, as a culture. And because there are people who are going to do that willingly, affirmative action is, in its purest form, a necessary discursive tool for the time being.